Hello and welcome to the Bravas Luxury Living Podcast. In these podcasts, we try and cover subjects that would be interested to people who have luxury homes or building a luxury home or just interested in luxury homes and the technologies and the automation they can do. If this is the first time you've found the Luxury Living Podcast, we'd really like you to subscribe, to share, to like, and let other people know. If there's a subject you'd like us to cover on the Luxury Living Podcast, leave us a comment, send us an email, let us know, and we'll do our best to make sure we can cover that in a future episode. As ever on these podcasts, I have with me my colleague Keith. Keith, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Nigel.
So Keith, the subject this week is our great subject of home offices. Maybe a subject a year ago we wouldn't have thought about covering, and now I know it's a conversation everybody's having.
Yeah, I don't think I could have talked intelligently about it a year ago, but it just feels like a pretty ingrained part of our life now.
I agree. And to help us do that, I'm going to bring in two other colleagues of ours. From our Houston office is Kevin Roach. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Nigel. Thanks for having me.
And from Baltimore on the East Coast is Sean Warner. Sean, how are you?
Hi. Good. Good afternoon.
Well, listen, guys, this is a subject that is very passionate and near and dear to my heart. But I thought I'd sort of open us with a bit of an open question. And ask the question is, as we're all doing Zooms and Teams and all these sorts of calls, what are some of the things that when you look at other people's broadcasts, some other people's video, that either annoy you or frustrate you or you wish you could shout at them? I don't know. Are there any obvious, Keith, that you have?
I think the biggest one for me isn't necessarily the quality. It's people just being unwilling to turn on their camera. I think we have the technology now where we can feel more like we're sitting in a room talking to each other. So when we're not taking advantage of it, I kind of wonder what people are hiding.
How about you, Kevin? What annoys you?
Yeah, I'm exact alignment with Keith. It's always funny. You sign into a call that might have 8 or 10 people on it, and 3 people have their screens up, and I just envision everyone hanging out in their pajamas trying to conduct business. So it's always a little funny, I think.
Yeah, and actually I know people who end calls and then stay on the calls and see whose camera, whose line doesn't drop because they know they weren't really listening. What about you, Sean? What have you discovered in the last year you don't like?
I'm surprised how many people are on Zoom calls while they're driving, and they set the phone on the console of their car on their dashboard, and you're looking up their nose and at the roof of their car and through the sunroof while they're involved in the meeting.
Well, I think Kevin's actually one of the worst about that.
Well,
Kevin's always going somewhere.
Always going somewhere doing something. I can tell you the one that annoys me are the people who use what I think they think is clever. That's these digital virtual backgrounds where they're either superimposing themselves over a Caribbean island and the key never works very well, or that they've got it blurred out. For some reason, people don't want you to see what's in their room, rather than do what you guys have done, which is think through what's behind you, and we'll talk more about that. They put this fuzzy virtual background on, and it's never lit properly. So as their head moves, they go in and out, and it drives me crazy.
I have to admit, we were on a call with I think it was somebody from the Baltimore office, and I've never seen the Baltimore office, but they had this cool looking like condominium background, and their key was working perfectly. And I was thinking, is that how cool our Baltimore office is? And then finally he moved real quick and I could see it behind him, and I was like, oh, okay. I was disappointed.
Well, so we're going to try and break this conversation down into chunks to make it easier, and I'll try and help us navigate through these chunks. But I wanted to start with a statistic that I think is really worth talking about, because while home offices aren't just about video and audio, they've become very into that. And what we know from communications is about 70% of the effectiveness is what we look like, about 23% is what we sound like, and 7% is what we say. And I think people sort of forget the 93% and just focus on the 7. So I want us to spend really no time on the 7 because we can't tell people what to talk about. Or we could, but they probably wouldn't listen. And I really want to spend a lot more time on the 93%, which is what they look like and what they sound like. So let's start with what they look like. Kevin, when you talk to clients, what do you talk about in terms of what room makes a good home office? Is that conversation happening more and more?
Yeah, it's certainly happening more frequently. And I would even go a step further and say that, that people are now designing homes and building homes around the concept of what the home office looks like. And so we're talking about how do you light the space so that, you can see the person that you're talking to, or the person that you're talking to can actually see you. We talk about how it might be functional, like what that looks like, as far as space and the ability to have your notes and things available to you. And we talk about, maybe even in the future beyond that, like, is there a small collaboration space within that area as well? But specific to your question and how that needs to look, it's making sure that we have enough light coming at our face, making sure we have a high quality camera that can clearly put you in good focus, and not having distractions behind you, right? We've all been on videos where someone's in the kitchen and they're walking behind them, or a kid comes running in, and it's being able to eliminate the distractions that happen on the video call.
Yeah, I've kind of seen some of the same things. Like, unfortunately, in my home office, it's that style from the last, 20 years. If you put it right on the front of the house, so how it looks to somebody coming into the home actually matters. And so the way my office kind of has to be arranged, I have windows behind me. It doesn't look great. And I think that's the kind of thing we need to be thinking about as we're designing new home offices. Is there's a really good chance that somebody's going to be working from here remotely on video conference calls. So what does it look like? Not just what do they look like, but what do their surroundings look like? And how can we create, these are luxury homes. How can we create built-ins? So we create something that looks really nice architecturally, but also frames that person really well. So when they are on a call or are on camera, they look like they're in a professional space.
How about you,
Yeah,
Sean?
I think that's what I'm seeing and hearing more of, and it's been an interesting conversation, is that we do design that one space or the one office, and we look into things like lighting, and we look into the audio quality and electronics that are installed and integrated. But what I ran into personally, what I think a lot of our clients are seeing, is it's not just one person working from home. So you could build one really great space, but when mom and dad are both home trying to work, and both kids are in school, there's a competition for who gets the good spot. Usually the kids aren't going to win, I would imagine. But we found ourselves discussing, whose call is more important, who has to look more professional this morning, who gets the good spot versus who gets the secondary spot in the house. So I think it's a discussion that's beyond one space. It might be multiple spaces.
Yeah, I also think that's absolutely right. And as you say, if you've got both parents, working and the kids schooling, you may need multiple spaces, or you'll convert the bedroom. What's interesting to me is I've looking at each of us, and we've all made sort of design decisions, which are not good or bad. They're just different. And I think, as Keith said, I think the first thing someone should do when they think about the home office they're going to work out of is think about what's behind them. So I have what's a neutral gray background. So for my podcasting, a background like this uses up very little bandwidth. So it really keeps me in focus. Keith's got more like a room in shadow. I can tell Kevin's in his office, and Sean's done a nice job of giving interesting things to look at. So the first question is, what, for people who are watching you on camera, what do you want them to see? And there's not one right or wrong answer, but I think there's a set of design decisions that people need to take.
That's right.
Yeah.
In my office in particular, I think is set up where my desk is set to the side, and so the art and feature wall behind me is off-centered. And I think if I were to have designed this from the beginning, knowing that this was an important feature, we clearly would have designed the backdrop to be centered on where I would be sitting and having a more kind of pleasing, natural look on filling the entire screen, or at least having it more symmetrical. And in this situation, it's not, because I haven't gone back and redesigned how that might actually lay out. But certainly when we have the opportunity up front and the discussions that we're having, that's bringing in our, in the luxury homes, we're bringing in our designers, we're bringing in, the architects and the builders, and we're talking about where does this actually sit and how do we make sure we align all those things together. And that conversation just wasn't happening a year ago. And now it's an everyday conversation we have when we look at new homes and new plans.
And Sean, your lighting looks great, so that I can see purples and stuff. How are you doing that?
Well, we have a couple different spots we use in the office for calls like this, and I happen to like this one because it gives a little taste of what we do, especially with someone who doesn't know who they're talking to the first time. I've got a high-end speaker behind me. I think you could probably see the corner of the TV in the image. some acoustical treatments, and I'm using Ketra lighting, so I could, if I want to fumble with the app on the call, I could change those colors while we're sitting here. But just to highlight and accent, it gives a little taste and a little flavor of what Bravas is and what we do, without an overwhelmingly distracting background, because there's some larger spaces here where you can see multiple items and pieces of furniture and things in the space, and I think that's a little distracting when your eyes are carrying from the person who's speaking into the back of the room where that nice little chair is located, or checking out the lamps and the artwork and what have you.
I love that you're using Ketra to do that, because I think it gives so much flexibility. One thing I've been telling clients is if they can't face a really big window, to just wash the wall across from their desk in as much light as possible. They get that really smooth, diffuse studio-like lighting. But being able to combine that, like white walls, and then having Ketra as an option to add color and to add depth and layers, and honestly, just to give you so much more control over how bright your background is versus how bright your foreground is. I think that's such a unique use for Ketra in a single room that I really hope we're getting to do more and more for clients, because it's such a powerful tool.
I guess the other nice thing about Ketra, which is sort of more human-centric lighting, is we're spending a long time in these offices. It's not, we can spend all 12 hours of a day working, and if the light sucks, that's going to give us headaches and eye aches, and it's not only a bad experience for the person on the other end of a teleconference, it can be an unhealthy experience for you stuck in a windowless room almost for the whole day.
I thought we only had 4-hour work days here.
No, we do the full 12 now. So
Just half days.
The other thing, Keith, I know you're often keen on is not only the lighting, but the using good baffling to manage sound as well. That's also can add to the. We'll talk about sound later, but that also adds to the look of the room, doesn't it?
Yeah, it can. In my office specifically, I chose an acoustical treatment that just blends into the walls. That's like the exact same color as the paint, so that you can't really see it. But I know, like in Sean's case, they have acoustical treatments that actually are decorative pieces of the room. The art behind me is going to be replaced soon with a decorative acoustical panel. So I love that you can say, hey, here's some functional elements we really need in the room, but they can also be design elements. So they don't have to spend money on both. They can combine it all into one tool instead of one just decorative piece.
Okay, so we've got the room looking good. We've got the lighting nice. We've got a nice background. Let's move on to, particularly for people doing conference calls, cameras. So I want to talk to each of you about what you're using to do your camera, and some ideas you think people should think about when thinking about the camera that goes into their office. So Kevin, what are you using and what do you tell clients?
Currently, I'm using a Logitech Brio as the camera for most of my Zoom calls in my office, and I love the camera. It's stationary on top of my monitor, and so it mounts well. It's generally in a good spot for communicating. It allows a number of adjustments. I can increase or decrease brightness. I can zoom in the camera. I can set it further back if I want to have a little wider angle, or if I need to have somebody else in the room with me that may not be on their own camera. And so it's a really flexible camera at a very affordable price that works well in a situation like that. Separately, like I've got a laptop actually that has a very poor camera in it, and so I try very seldom to use that camera unless it's only out of necessity. And so having a camera that really allows some of those adjustments and allows things to be focused or brightness adjusted based off of the time of day or the amount of light you have in the room or the space that you're in, I think is a really important feature to that.
Sean, what are you using?
Kevin stole my thunder. I use a Logitech camera as well. It's easy, it's portable. Like you said, it's affordable, and it's done a great job for me. I bought this thankfully before COVID was a thing, and it turns out I was just in time because I think they were sold out. I'm not sure if they're shipping them now. They were a little hard to come by for a while, but it's a major upgrade from the one that's built into my laptop.
Yeah, so you're both on Logitech Brios, I think, which, by the way, say 4K, and even though we're not on a 4K, and most people don't, most Zoom is about 360, Teams is 720. The better the camera, the better the picture will look. And if we do a good, better, best, I would tell you the lowest good is the Logitech Brio. And I would encourage everybody, I have to tell you, on the list of things I don't like, is looking up people's noses because they're using their laptop and they're down like this, and it looks terrible. So the base, I think, is a Logitech Brio. You can have it on a stand, you can put it on a monitor, or Keith, you can go like us. We've gone up a level from that. What are you using?
Yeah, I think we may have gone too far, but I'm using a Sony A7, so a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. And I think somebody could get into a really, really good setup if they wanted that really professional look, a really good mirrorless camera setup for probably $700 or $800 with a lens, a little desktop tripod. But I think that works great. I love using it this way. And I would say for those people that don't either want the extra complication of adding cameras or something like that, your point of shooting up the nose was great, because even something like a laptop stand to get your laptop into the right position is going to be much better than just not addressing it at all. So if somebody doesn't want to go out and buy a Brio, a $30 or $40 laptop stand is probably going to, at the very least, give them the right angle to shoot at.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit more at market from Keith because I'm an idiot. And so I'm staring into what's called a Blackmagic Cinema Pocket Cinema camera. It's a 4K professional camera. And I'm actually looking into a teleprompt, which is how it's easy for me to read the notes I have for this meeting and look directly into it. But I would tell you that, particularly if you're a senior executive or a senior leader, looking as good as I know both Kevin and Sean do using a Brio, or going up market to a professional camera or a semi-professional camera, makes a huge difference to the experience of somebody on the other end of the line. And it will also help with light and things like that. What other, do you have any other video technology that you talk to clients about? Anybody?
We've installed a few systems that have multiple monitors and multiple displays. That way, it may not be a teleprompter like you're using, Nigel, but if you want to keep your presentation notes on one screen while your video conference and the gallery view of the people you're speaking with is on another, it simplifies the process. So it gives you more real estate to see, makes things larger and easier to read for someone who's presenting. So if you're not just participating, you're actually presenting. It's a nice tool to have.
Similarly, we have multiple monitor setups, right? It used to just be that you went horizontal with them, but now we're seeing them actually go vertical as well, so that they can have notes in front of them and not have to worry about panning up and down or left to right, and actually having it within eyesight so that you can see that. So I think that's been far more popular in the last year than really we had in the past. Used to be just energy traders had the double height setup, right? Because they had to watch so many screens at one time, and now everybody's doing that. We're seeing that frequently in offices, and frankly, it's something that as we start looking at how is an office actually configured and set up, that millwork and trim work is actually changing, and we have to start speccing that stuff at the very beginning to make sure that we have enough vertical space, which is unlike it used to be altogether.
We just worked on a system for a new client that's a commercial project. They're a private equity firm with offices around the country, and they want to be able to share their key performance indicators on multiple screens in their conference room, but also share it with their partners across the country. And we're using, in addition to multiple monitors on the wall and a pretty fancy PC to generate enough outputs to cover those displays, a touchscreen monitor that allows them to annotate and take notes and point to things on the screen as they're presenting. That can be saved and stored as part of the presentation.
And Keith, it matters where you put the camera with respect to the screen, doesn't it?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'm probably the worst offender on this podcast because my camera's the furthest away from where my eye line is. But yeah, it's, to me, the one upside of using the camera built into your computer is you're going to have a pretty good eye line. It's going to look like you're looking at the person you're talking to when you're talking to them. But as a general rule, get the camera as close to the monitor as you can. And to take that even a step further, move your window. So if you're on Zoom or Teams, move that window, make it smaller, and move it as high on the screen as you can and as close to the camera, which will make it look more like you're looking at the person you're talking to.
Yeah, I think these tips. I tell you, the other thing is if you have a big monitor, you can actually put it behind the camera. It's you can't always see all the monitor, but then at least you're looking through the camera lens. And multiple monitors I think are pretty important to a good office setup. So you need to think if you're going to put multiple monitors in, what desk are they going off to? So you like your Queen Anne or your Victorian desk, you may not want to be screwing monitors into that. So think about, and people like these desks that go up and down. So think about the furniture you're going to put this technology on as well. Because if you've got a very expensive desk, you may not want to do that. So we've got the room looking nice. You got a decent camera. The next issue, and actually the thing that delays this podcast more than anything else getting online, is sound. So in the same way I asked you about your camera, why don't we talk about what are you using as a mic and how are you listening to this conversation? And people will get a sense of the different sound that gives. So Sean, why don't you go first and then Kevin?
Well, it's good I'm going first. I'm probably using the least impressive piece of technology here. I bought one for portability and presentation. So I had a conferencing speaker microphone combination from Jabra that I bought about a year ago. That's been fantastic. So it's a better speaker than what's built into my laptop. It's a much better microphone than what's built into my laptop. I can use it here in the office. I can carry it with me and take it home if I'm working from home. If I'm on the road in a hotel room, it works just as well from there. And it fits nicely into a backpack or a briefcase or a suitcase. So that's the one that's been my default and my go-to.
What are you using, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm using Beats headphones for both my microphone and my speaker, which is probably the lowest quality thing you should ever possibly do. However, I'm always on the run and always between things, and I've just yet to invest in a better quality headset and microphone. In fact, I'm looking at the microphone above on the screen, and I see Keith's like professional microphone sitting in front of him, and I think that guy looks incredible. He's obviously done this so many times, and he clearly knows how to make sure it's done right. And I kind of laugh at myself being the one with the least tech-oriented or quality stuff that's on here.
Yeah, this is actually just cardboard. I'm really just using the microphone on my computer. No, I do think it's important to have a good microphone. Obviously, I think this is a Rode Pod mic. So this is a very expensive microphone and you need some other electronics to make it work. I think it's worth it for what we're doing here on the podcast. But I think the most important thing for people to know is just kind of how microphones work. So essentially, the closer you can get your microphone to your mouth, the more it's going to pick up your voice and the less it's going to pick up the sounds in your room. So Sean's Jabra piece is really cool because it's designed to kind of be in the room with him. If he wants to pace around, kind of move around in a space while talking, it's going to pick up his voice really well. But if you don't have something specifically designed for conferencing like that, just having, the microphone on your headphones close to your mouth is going to be much better than shouting across the room at your computer.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I can tell you that I'm using it's probably out of shot here, but it's just below a Shure SM7B into a sound mixer, and I actually have the fancy earplug. You probably can't even see the wire. It feeds straight into my ear, and I actually find that I can wear this thing. It's actually called an N-ear. You can buy them online. They're about a couple $100 mostly, and I can really wear this all day, and I almost don't feel it in my ear, and it feeds the sound straight in. So between a fairly expensive microphone, as Keith said, the closer you are to the microphone, the better sound will be, and a good earplug. And if you buy a microphone, just make sure it has some direction to it, because otherwise you'll be picking up every other noise in the room if you buy the wrong mic. But getting a good mic, I have to tell you that my experience, at least for whatever it's worth, is that I can put up with a bad picture a lot longer than I can put up with bad sound. And that if something sounds crappy, it's really hard to sit and listen to it for a long time. By the way, you have a really good mic on that Brio camera probably, so that's also another option. But learn where your settings are. I don't know, any of you guys struggle getting the settings right on these things?
Yeah, without a doubt, it's hard to find the right settings, and I think there's a couple of small things you can do to really make the experience better for the people you're on the call with, and that's to take the 15 or 20 minutes of time at the beginning when you're setting this up to make sure that you've got the right position where you're sitting in, to make sure that your camera zoomed into the right area, to make sure that you've got the focus set correctly, the brightness set correctly, any kind of, if you have either like a Ketra lighting or even like a Logitech Brio, I can actually change the color settings to, a cooler light or a warmer light and be able to get that set up. And it's hard to find. I think I had to download an app onto my Mac in order for me to be able to manipulate the camera once I plugged it in. And so doing that ahead of time and taking the time to set that up will really make the experience better for everybody, for yourself and for everyone else.
Yeah, it's actually important to remember that you don't know what the other person is experiencing. So my advice is get on a Zoom call or a Teams call with someone and say, this is the mic on my Brio. What does it sound like? This is the mic on my laptop. What does it sound like? This is my fancy schmancy mic. What does it sound like? Because unless you can record it, you're never going to know what it sounds like or what it looks like for the other person. So it's really worth not doing the practice call that comes with these things, but actually getting on a call with someone. And try and avoid using the speaker. Use a headset where you can, because that introduces a huge amount of echo. And often these systems start overcompensating and really messing up the sound. Any other thoughts on settings on machines for people?
Yeah, one other thing I think, and this really builds on what you just said, is if someone is going to buy an external microphone and they're not going to use what's built into their computer, they essentially have to have a headset, because if your computer is outputting the audio from your call into that microphone, it's going to cause an echo and a delay. So just about any time you hear that problem on a call where somebody's talking and they start hearing their own voices, somebody has a microphone that's not built into their computer and they're using the audio from their computer, and that's always going to create an issue. So if you're going to start tackling the audio issue, you have to tackle the input and the output side.
This might speak to my vanity a little bit, but I downloaded an app about a year ago called Hand Mirror. I know it's a Mac app. I'm not sure if it's available on a PC. All it is a little window where you can light up your connected camera or cameras and see the different views. So you can see what you look like in your webcam, what your background looks like. And I usually try that for a second before I join a Zoom call to make sure there's nothing in the background that I don't want to see, that I don't have a hair out of place or whatever it may be. And actually, I don't have any hairs out of place because I don't have any hairs. But if I had hairs, I'd want them to be in place.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. The other thing is play with the settings. Know where whether you're using Zoom or Teams or something else, where the settings are quickly. So if there's a problem, you don't have to, stare. You can quickly find out what they are. I think that's, and by the way, if you don't restart your PC, every so often restart it, because these things need a clean memory and often going. So we got the room right, we got the video right, we got the sound right. I wonder if there are, we sort of started in a slightly negative way of sort of bad habits that people have. Are there any good habits that you've observed people on video conferences over the last year or so? You go, well, that's really a helpful thing. I try to adopt that. Anybody got any of those?
I think, that we wouldn't have done this podcast if we didn't feel somewhat comfortable with what we're doing. But I think it is really, really obvious when somebody takes simple steps like moving their desk in front of a window so that they have good light on their face, or just putting decorations on the wall behind them. I know people from our company who have pictures on the wall that would probably look weird if you just walked into their room. It wouldn't make sense why they're there, but they knew that they were going to be on camera a lot, wanted to look professional. And so they took the time to decorate that space. And I think it does show a lot of professionalism. And maybe we didn't talk about the why you need to do this, but at the beginning of COVID, I've said this on multiple podcasts, I think, but at the beginning of the COVID era, just being able to turn on your webcam was a sign of, enough professionalism to get by. But now that we've been doing this for a while and are going to continue doing it going forward, this is a tool that we're not going to back away from. It is important to set a higher standard of professionalism. You wouldn't invite somebody into your office and just leave trash everywhere. And in the same way, I think we need to treat our virtual space like our office.
Anybody got any other ones? I know I do a regular call, something that's called office hours, where it's done on Zoom, and there's always a lot of people on it. And there's always a moderator. And if you want to speak, you stick your hand up. You don't use the electronic hand. You stick your hand up, and the moderator will call you. You come off mute. And that way, you don't have what happens when my family all gets together and does a Zoom, which is everybody talking over each other. And That is a good habit. You guys, Kevin or Sean, got any you've seen you like?
Yeah, I think another good habit for people is if you happen to get on late, get on with your microphone muted, because you don't know at what point you're jumping in on people. And I think that's just a kind and considerate way to join a call, is making sure that you're joining, but not in a distractive way for the participants who are already there. And I think the second thing is probably just be on time, right? Get on your call early so that you're not even a distraction. As simple as that sounds, right? The meeting times are set, show up on time, be ready to go ahead of time off of it. So
I think one thing that kind of ties in with what you're saying, Kevin, is just turning off the notifications on your machines and on your laptop, on your computer, on your handheld devices. There's nothing more irritating than hearing a phone ringing or a notification buzz or the little Microsoft ding every time you get a Teams message while you're on a call or a presentation or a business meeting like this.
Yeah, my best advice is don't do it on your iPad or your laptop and then go to the toilet without turning your camera off. I think that was one of the great early experiences we all saw. And if you've never seen it, you can go to our YouTube and search for it. You'll find it. I can't imagine the mortification of that, but just think about what it's like for the other person on the other end of the line, and remember, 70% is what you look like. 23% is what you sound like, and 7% is what you say. So you can't say enough smart things to cover up for a bad picture and bad sound. Are there any other home office tips, you guys who've been configuring and designing these with people, that you'd want to include here?
I think planning for the lighting, we've talked about it, but I think that's one of the biggest things is it doesn't matter how good of a camera you buy. If the light in your space is bad, the picture is going to look really, really bad. So if you don't want to buy a bunch of extra equipment, which you shouldn't have to, just plan to make sure that you have enough light in front of you that your face is going to look brighter than your background. It's what we do with artwork. We want that, I think people say, between 30% and 3 times brighter for the artwork than the space around it. But we should do the same thing with our faces.
Yeah, and by the way, you could buy on little lights like this, which are little LED lights on Amazon, and at some distance they'll add some light. I mean, if you're going to do it properly, you have a picture that looks a bit like Sean's, but you really want light coming at you from 2 different places, potentially 3, but at least 2, so you don't have any shadows. Kevin or Sean, when you're designing home offices for people, anything else you're bringing up?
I think a big part of it is decluttering, right? So there's so many devices. We're talking about cameras and microphones and computers and laptops and screens and stands and microphone stands, and throw on the printers and the USB hubs and the other things that go on the desk. Just finding doing a professional job of installing those and making sure that we can manage the cabling, we can manage the connections, have good locations for those devices so you can be comfortable in the space and not feel like you're tied in this bundle of cables and a rat's nest of wiring where you're trying to present.
Kevin, we'll give you the last word.
I also think make sure you have a great chair, right? We're doing so many more of these now. Make sure you've got a comfortable place to sit so that you're at ease and in a natural state while you're working on this. I think that's another really big thing. I've seen people come in with, more design-oriented seating, and I think to myself, how difficult or how bad would it feel if I was on calls all day like I am and sitting in that chair? So
I think that probably should have been near the front of this podcast rather than the back, because that's a great catch. And by the way, there are no end of office blocks that are selling expensive chairs at the moment in your locality. If you check Craigslist or wherever you buy stuff cheaply, I bet you there's some very smart chairs going for really good prices. Well, listen, guys, I think that was a great conversation. I'm excited that Bravas can help our clients get the right office, home office experience, because my guess is they've been fairly successful in life. Let's give them the opportunity to look as good as they could, sound as good as they can, and be as comfortable as they can doing it. So thanks very much.